So here's a question. Have you ever, or do you now, have any involvement with pot? From smoking it, to growing a few plants, to owning a weed company, and maybe even owning a few shares of one? That's a pretty big range. And if the answer is yes, that could mean being blocked from entering the United States. Jeannie Lee is here with more. So wow, even after pot becomes legal in Canada, you may not be able to go to the U.S.
Because the border guards are there to apply U.S. federal law, and under that law, cannabis is still illegal. And so it's pretty clear that even in the U.S., where in some states weed is legal, and some states themselves might relax their rules, the fact is crossing from Canada into the U.S. will be a problem. And here's what a spokesperson with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection told us at CBC News, that as marijuana remains federally prohibited in the U.S., working or having involvement even in the legal marijuana industry in the U.S. or Canada may affect an individual's admissibility to the U.S. And he added that determinations will be done on a case-by-case basis, meaning border guards have total discretion to question you, to stop you and search you maybe, and depends what the sniffer dogs smell, depends on what they smell. Maybe they don't even suspect anything at all, but they can still ask you questions. And if you admit to pot use even after it's legal, or admit to pot use in the past, well, you can be sent home, and that is noted on your record. And of course, if you lie to, or you're caught lying to a border guard, then you could be banned from the U.S. for life.
Yeah, and so involvement, the word involvement,
yes,
it really could mean so many things. It's not just about pot use. It could be about some pot ownership or owning some shares.
And that's what stood out to us in this statement, that involvement could be anything from heavy daily use to that one time in high school, or maybe what you say about owning shares, but even think about all the way down the line. If you should work for one of the many weed companies that seem to be growing all the time, or maybe one of the many retail stores that will soon be set up in some provinces, and everything in between. What if you work for a rolling paper company? Are you involved? And then getting back to the investment part, I think what they mean to say is that if you're a weed entrepreneur, if you have a company, you might have to be very careful. But what about owning an ETF, one of those very popular exchange-traded funds that replicates an index? At any given time, stocks are added, taken away, same as mutual funds. And you don't know unless you track obsessively. How can you answer that question clearly? Now, just for fun, we asked the Canada Pension Plan, do all Canadians own weed stocks anyway through the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board? And here's the answer from a spokesperson who noted that, yes, the Canada Pension Plan does own Constellation Brands, which has 38% of Canopy Growth, which is a medical weed company. But the spokesperson noted that Constellation Brands is part of a passive portfolio through broad public indices. So to say we are pursuing cannabis stocks would be incorrect. But, the letter of the law...
That still could be interpreted as involvement.
Exactly. So you have... I think it's really up to the interpretation. Of course, we're taking it to a very extreme interpretation, but we're trying to make the point that involvement could mean anything.
So you'd have to have quite a stomach to own those weed stocks.
Anyway, because if we just look at what's going on today, I thought I'd point out some of these weed stocks, what they've been doing. Tilray, for example, just became a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ market, and it today is down 12.5%, but it has jumped fourfold in just a couple of months. Canopy Growth, we talked about that just a moment ago, it's up 5% right now. It was down 8% earlier today, right after the story made the news and people started to react. Weed ETF, by the way, speaking of ETFs, it was up 3% just now, but down 6% early today.
Hi everybody, my name's Mike. This is my YouTube page, Mox News. Thanks very much for tuning in. I hope you're finding something of value here. I truly do. Okay, so something of value. My dad taught me when I was very young. I grew up, my dad was, he was, It's hard to describe. Have you ever seen the Bruce Willis movie Red, R-E-D, Retired and Extremely Dangerous? That was my dad. He knew all the cops. He knew all the bankers. You know, he was Masonic Club. And he always carried guns. And he knew how to deal with cops. And number one rule was never volunteer information, which means if you're going to, you know, do something that's going to like give you away, you know, put you into trouble for no reason, you don't need to volunteer that information. Make them drag it out of you. Make them go, oh, well, what's this in your pocket? But now there are exceptions to this rule. And the reason I bring this up, because this story is about entering the United States from Canada, and the Border Patrol asking people, they're going to ask you if you use cannabis when you enter the United States from Canada. And yes, it's legal to use cannabis in the United States. I mean, it is legal in Washington State to use cannabis. And it is legal in Canada, starting next month, to use cannabis. But the feds, the cops, are still, you know, police state, you know, gung-ho, you know, I hate hippies. So, you know, and hippies' lives matter, damn it. Never volunteer information. They're going to ask you, do you use cannabis? You tell them no. You say, look at me, officer. Do I look like I use cannabis? And this, my dad always said, never volunteer information, because if you say yes, they're going to mark it on your permanent record. And every time you come to and they're not just asking you, do you use cannabis? They're saying, have you ever used cannabis? Right? You don't have to answer that question. Fuck those people. Fuck them. Fuck their rules. Cannabis is the safest drug there is. Safer than aspirin, way safer than water. Okay? Fuck their police state, nanny state, petty tyrant rules. Okay? We live in the 21st century. We have the internet. We know cannabis stops cancer. We know cannabis helps people with dementia. We know cannabis helps people suffering from Alzheimer's. We know cannabis helps protect people from Alzheimer's. At least those of us who choose to know, who seek knowledge, who want the truth. Now, I have an example for you about not volunteering information. But again, they're going to ask you at the border if you use cannabis. If you tell them yes, they're going to mark it on your record. They're going to say, this is a cannabis user, and they're going to say, you're not allowed to enter the United States, and you're never going to be able to. And I love Canadians. Canadians make the world a better place. Okay, so I don't want, and I feel that way about everyone. I love Canadians. Canadians have a wicked sense of humor. Okay, Canadians are my kind of people. So, anyways, they're going to ask you, and you don't want this on your permanent record, not because, again, it's a negative thing, but because they will hold it against you in a permanent type of way. And who knows what other countries have this kind of law, and who knows what other countries the United States can't wait to share this information with. So, never, if some government official asks you if you use cannabis, you're going to say, what, are you a cop? No, officer. Do I look like I use cannabis? Of course. I would never use cannabis. It's illegal to use cannabis, isn't it? No, I don't break the laws, officer. I'm a good person. I'm a Good, and we all know Jeff Sessions says good people don't smoke marijuana because that's the kind of people. Jeff Sessions is the kind of people who think that cannabis is dangerous. He's a dinosaur that needs to go away and never be heard from again. The planet will be a much better place, much safer place for everyone, including children, when people like Jeff Sessions are no longer around. Because Jeff Sessions cannot wait to destroy your children's lives because they smoked a joint. So we're clear. Can't wait to put a permanent strike on your children's lives because at the border, they weren't carrying any weed. They just said, yeah, man, we smoke weed. Because they're cool like that. And their parents didn't teach them not to volunteer information. Jeff Sessions wants to put a permanent strike on your kids' records that say you can never cross the border. And who knows how many people he can't wait to share that with. Okay? So, never volunteer information. And I want to explain, again, if you have needles on you, the cop says, do you have any needles on you? And you say no, and he gets stuck by a needle, your life is pretty much null and void at that point. If you have weapons on you, and cop asks you, do you have any weapons, any guns or knives on you? And you say no, and they find a gun on you, you are considered a serious threat to them. Okay? So this is information that's actually of great importance for you to convey to them. If they ask you if you have any drugs on you, and you say no, and they find drugs on you, that didn't hurt them at all. Except for maybe it hurt their feelings because you lied to them. Fuck their feelings. But here's the deal. Okay, so in 1997, I met this awesome girl, right? I was sitting in the Alibi room in the Pike Place Market, which was right across from the police station in the Pike Place Market. It's called the Alibi Room. It's a little bar. And I was sitting at the bar, and this girl walks up to me. And she says, I just gotten out of the Ween concert across the street at the Showbox, which was the first time I had seen Ween, and it just fucking blew me away. And so this girl walks up to me, Ginger, right? Ginger with fucking big, curly hair, right? Big. And she comes up to me and she said, you got a cigarette, sugar ass? And I said, no, but I have this. I reach into my pants and I grab my pipe and I put my pipe on the table. It's a wooden pipe. And she goes, and I'm sitting at the bar and she sits down next to me and she grabs the pipe and she goes, puff, puff, puff. And the bartender goes over and says, what can I get you? And she goes, oh. And I said, we got to go. But I took her with me when we were going. And I believe I looked at her when she blew the smoke into the bartender's face, said, I love you. And she went with us, and she became my girlfriend for many months. And I still miss her. And I said, what's your name? She said, call me Bitch Bitch. And I still miss you, Bitch Bitch, every single day. She is a fantastic, amazing artist. Mind-blowing. Like, wow, this girl's got some demons. So anyways, I was going out on my first date with Bitch Bitch. And I was meeting her downtown, and she lived out in, 10 miles away or whatever. And she didn't drive, so she had a friend of hers drive her. And so it was like three of us there, and we're talking, and they're like, hey, you know where there's a party? You want to go to a party? I was like, all right, let's go to a party. So I get in the car, and this guy is driving. He's driving a Scirocco, which I always love Scirocco. It's like I don't know what year it was, probably an 82 or 81, something like that, maybe a little newer. And he driving a Scirocco. I'm sitting in the back seat, and he's just like flying through fucking stop signs, not even slowing down, just flying through stop signs. And he'd been drinking, you know, and he goes through this intersection of a four-way stop. He doesn't stop at all. He goes in, he pulls a U-turn and just takes off the other direction, and there's a cop sitting at one of the stop signs, and the cop jumps in behind him, and he pulled over immediately, which was good. And the cop says, he says, is there any weed? Is there any drugs in the car? Any drugs or weapons in the car? And the driver says, yes. And I'm thinking, he said, what kind of drugs are in the car? He said, what, is there weapons or drugs? He said, there's drugs. He said, what kind of drug? He says, there's weed. I have marijuana. He says, there's weed in the car. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm sitting in the back seat, right? And I'm thinking, he better not be talking about my weed, because I ain't seen him pull any weed out all night. I smoke continuously, or at that time I did. Now I just take 3 or 4 puffs a day, but I eat a lot of marijuana. But he says, yeah, there's weed in the car. And I'm like, he better not be talking about my weed. And the cop says, okay, everyone needs to get out of the car. You're all under arrest. I'm like, oh, fucking great, right? And the guy's got a film canister, which is airtight, a film canister with like 2 grams of weed in it, and it's a stick shift car, right? It's a VW Scirocco. It's a stick shift, and it used to be that on a stick shift they'd have like a what they call a leather boot, which was like a triangle cone of leather that went down around where the stick shift was, and it kept stuff from falling down into that space where you had to move the stick shift. And anyways, he had this film canister stuck underneath the leather boot of a stick shift, right, somewhere no one would look. I don't think. Maybe a cop would look there, but wow. And he's like, it's under the boot, you know. I'm like, oh, I'm not talking about my weed. And the cop comes over and puts handcuffs on me, right? Put your hands behind your back. He puts handcuffs on me, and he says, do you have any drugs or weapons on you? Right? And I got an ounce of weed, not an ounce, I got like a half ounce of weed in this pocket right here, right? In this pocket, I got a half ounce of weed. And then over in this pocket, I got my pipe, right? And the cop says, do you have any weed or alcohol or weapons on you? And in my best Beavis and Butthead imitation, I said, no. And he goes like this. And he runs his hand down this side of my body, right, like this, and he goes, and he reaches into my pocket, and he pulls out a half an ounce of weed, and he puts it back in my pocket, and he runs his hand down this side of my body, and he goes, and he reaches into this pocket, and he pulls out a pipe, and he sees what it is, and he puts it back in my pocket. And he said, and my hands are handcuffed, and he says, go over there and put your head on the car, you know, just stand there, right? So I go over and I put my head on the car, and I get my hands behind my back, and the cop comes over, and bitch is standing at the car, and he's running everybody's IDs and stuff, and bitch is standing in the car. She's not handcuffed. She's, you know, and she doesn't have to have her head down on the car. She's just standing there, and it's our first date, right? And she's all, oh, I'm so sorry, and she's crying, and I look up and I say, bitch, did I tell you You're the kind of woman who makes me glad that I'm a man. And she started giggling, gets a big smile on her face. And the cop comes over and he undoes our handcuffs and he says, okay, you're getting a ticket for no seatbelt. Because it's like 1980 car. I don't even know if it had a seatbelt, a working seatbelt or not. And he said, and you're getting a ticket for possession of cannabis and some other thing, running a stop sign, and you need to go directly home. Like, okay. And that was it. But because I didn't put on record, yes, I have a half ounce of marijuana and a pipe in my pocket for his body camera or whatever it is. Once it's on record, you can't take it back. So you say, no. Why do I look like I smoke marijuana, officer? You don't need to be a smartass about it. I can't help myself a lot. I have another story about that. But just no. Just don't volunteer information. If you're crossing the Canadian border, they ask you if you ever used cannabis. You say no. No uncertain terms. No, not really. No, you never use cannabis. Okay? You're not the kind of person who would use cannabis. You're very straight edge, as far as you know, officer. Okay? And again, don't be. I can't help those things coming out of my mouth. It's been since I was little, and they've tried like hell to beat it out of me. It just keeps coming out. But regardless, my name's Mike, and I thought this was really important information. My dad thought it was important information when I was coming of age. And I think it's probably important information for a lot of people who never got that information from their dad or, someone that was trying to make sure that they were, uh, properly trained on how to deal, overzealot police state government. Right. So I want to share that with you. My name's Mike. This is my YouTube page. There's over 7,510 videos on this page. It takes a lot of effort to get that many videos on this page. Most people could never do something like that. Every single video is hand selected for you guys. It takes a lot of time and effort to do that, and it means the world to me when you give something back. It's the only way Mox News survives. So there's a clickable link in the description box of this video, or to leave a tip or a donation, or you can go to moxnews.com, and it's really simple to do there. It takes like 2 minutes tops. So thanks very much for tuning in. One of these days, this war is gonna end. Stay cool until that day. One more thing, and I think it's really important. Actually stopped the upload of the video because I realized that I didn't say this, and then went back and re-rendered the video with this clip in it. One more thing, and that is, don't cross the border with weed. Okay, if you're crossing the border from going into Canada, don't take weed with you. It's easy to get weed in Canada. It's easy to get weed in Canada. Don't worry. Even though it's not October 17th yet, you'll have no trouble scoring weed in Canada. Now, if you're coming to, America or the United States, it's easy to get weed in the United States. In Maine, it's legal. In Washington State, it's legal. In Canada, in Colorado, it's legal. In Oregon and California, don't bring weed with you. Okay, just get it here. That way it's safe. You don't have to worry about, again, the cops. If the cops smell weed, they will detain you at the border. They'll rip everything out of your car, and if they find the smallest amount of weed, they'll seize your car, make you walk home, take the bus. And that's the fact, if they don't arrest you. So Don't cross the border with weed ever. Okay? Just play it safe. As soon as you cross the border into Washington, you'll have no problem finding a rec store and buying, you know, as long as you're 21, getting weed. And even if you're not 21, it shouldn't be a problem. You know, donors are cool, man. Just say, hey, where do I get some weed at? Where do I get some weed at, man? Anyways, I thought, you know, besides the other good advice I was giving, that this was really important, and I just want to add it in there. So thanks again. Stay cool. Wednesdays, the drug war is going to end. Clearly not with people like Jeff Sessions running the Justice Department, but one of these days. Stay cool till then.